Greetings, Region 4 stakeholders. Good evening. I am Mrs. Pamela Benford, representing Interim Region 4 Superintendent Dr. Antoinette Campbell. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Comprehensive Master Plan Town Hall meeting. We're happy that you have joined us for this very important event. Tonight, as we discuss the Comprehensive Master Plan and field questions, we hope you will be provided with greater clarity and a renewed sense of partnership with the district. At this time, Superintendent Cheryl Watson-Harris will bring you greetings.
Thank you so much, Ms. Binford, and good evening to all of our Region 4 stakeholders, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. We know that we have many of our Board of Education members, including our Board Chair, Mrs. Vicki B. Turner, and our Vice Chair, Mr. Dijon DaCosta on the line, and other Board of Education members that are with us. So thank you so much for your support. Before we dive right in, I just want to acknowledge that there was some confusion in the planning of your town hall. And we want to, just say thank you for sticking in there with us. We're here tonight on the 12th, which was the published date. We will be recording tonight's town hall and airing it again on Thursday because there was some confusion about a meeting on the 14th. But there wasn't anything that was going to stop us from being with you tonight because we want to share the work that's been happening, the planning, the recommendations, and to make sure that we created a space to get your input and feedback. But this is never meant to be the only one. So we'll set the stage tonight. We'll air it again on the 14th. And then depending on the feedback that we receive, we'll make a decision about if we need to have another meeting. So we just want to say thank you so much for your patience and thank you for being with us tonight. We hope that this will be an informative town hall meeting. This meeting, as well as all of the others that will follow, is the second phase of a partnership between you, our stakeholders, and the school district. This partnership is essentially important to us because it will serve as another opportunity to provide increased quality instruction, programs, and improve facilities for our scholars. I know I get inspired by that video that shows some of the work that has already happened in our incredible district, and we want to do more. The Comprehensive Master Plan, or the CMP, as we affectionately call it, and the process touches every aspect of our strategic plan. However, most specifically, Goal Area 1, Student Success with Equity and Access, and Goal Area 5, Facilities, will be the hallmark of this project. The CMP is not only a reflection of our strategic goals, it is another stroke on the canvas of our aspirational vision for the DeKalb County school graduate. Please understand that the information presented tonight, these are only recommendations. During this phase of the process, we want to get your feedback on what is being proposed. Again, we thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience and your grace. Thank you to all of our principals who flipped their schedules to be with us tonight because they wanted to be here to hear this message and be able to follow up with their families. Thank you to our partners at Perkins and Will and our entire staff for your flexibility. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our team. And I look forward to being in community with you this evening, hearing your questions and just our partnership on the road ahead. So thank you so much. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. And thank you for being here, Region 4. Before we get started, I want to give you a preview of what you're going to see here tonight. So next slide. So what you're going to see here are the recommended options or options for the recommendations for the comprehensive master plan. As the superintendent said, the phase that we're in now is to talk about these options to see what is it that we want to carry forward into the draft comprehensive master plan. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute, but what you're going to see here tonight are some options for new buildings, early learning centers in every region. We're going to discuss K-8s and the addressing continuity of instruction that they help to provide. We're going to talk about mergers, providing expanded programs and student support. That means bringing schools together, more resources for instruction for students, and addition of programs to prepare students for the changing workforce. So what is all this coming out of? Next slide. The CMP, the Comprehensive Master Plan, really came out of a recognition over the past several years that as the district moves forward and makes wide-ranging decisions about our facilities, our programs, and what the vision of this district is moving forward, there's a need for a comprehensive master plan, something that can bring all of these different components together and help provide a framework for the district as we move forward, something that will align with the vision of the district and will align with the district's strategic goals. So that's really what the CMP was or is. So many of you know that the comprehensive master plan we've been working on for quite some time. And I want to take you through kind of where we are in that process. So go ahead to the next slide. You can see here a timeline of the CMP implementation. And while a lot of the work that everyone is aware of that we've been doing has been in this year, 2021, the CMP really kicked off back in the late fall of 2020. That's when the initial phases of beginning to get talk to the Board of Education and beginning the process of the assessments that many of you may be familiar with really started. Those assessments really kicked into gear in the first few months of 2021. And that's also when we began the initial CMP town hall meetings. Many of you hopefully are familiar with those and the initial feedback that we got as far as what this district was looking to, what the community members, what the stakeholders, and what district leadership really were looking for the CMP to help provide as far as a vision and framework, and what that vision would be. Where would we be? Where do we want to be in 10 years? And what are the different components that go into that? So at this point, all of the different assessments are complete. We did have some issues completing them, and which dragged the schedule out a bit, especially over the summer. But at this point, all of those assessments are complete. All of the background data is there. It's all published on the CMP website. We've been having stakeholder engagement first through the first several months of 2021. And then as the superintendent pointed out, we're now in the second phase this fall. We had initial town halls this fall for every region that really looked at East Blast and the different funding sources and all of the different ways that whatever these options are, the ways that we can accomplish them. And where we are now is down in task 3, which is options development for CMP, which means we're looking at, well, what are these things that we want to accomplish? What are the big ticket items, the big things that will come out of the CMP that will help guide the district forward? There are a lot of smaller components that are part of the CMP and a lot of smaller decisions that will affect every single school, such as facility condition improvements and all of that sort of thing. But we're not quite there yet. What this round of public engagement and what these town halls, these regional town halls here in October are all about are discussing these options, discussing what are these big items. And so you can see here out of task 3, these options for school choice and special programs, you'll hear that tonight, and options for new facilities, additions and consolidation, or the mergers of schools that you'll hear a little bit about as well. District-wide redistricting is something that will come out of the CMP. However, that plus the prioritization of facility condition improvements, we wanted to keep the focus of these town halls here in October on those big ideas, K-8s, what new schools do we want to build, that sort of thing. And so a lot of that you'll hear coming when we have our draft comprehensive master plan, which is one of the big tickets as we go down to task 4, CMP reports and implementation strategies. So there's an implementation plan and schedule for recommendations, financial analysis of CMP recommendations and schedule. And the big thing that will help bring all of this together is the draft comprehensive master plan. After these town halls here in October, we will be developing and publishing a draft comprehensive master plan that we'll be presenting in November for public comment. And then the hope is that, out of the comments from all of these town halls, all of the town halls we've had in the past, and all of the comments that we get from on the draft comprehensive master plan, we'll develop a final CMP, a final comprehensive master plan that will include all of these elements, the final versions, final recommendations that will then go to the board hopefully in December for them to, for first read in December. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to our partners over at Perkins & Will and allow Jared Serwer to talk about some of the engagement that we've had up until now that has really led us to the recommendations, the options that you're going to hear discussed tonight.
Thanks, Hans. Happy to be here this evening. Thank you for welcoming us. I'd just like to start by saying that from the beginning of this process, we've made a very intentional effort to solicit input from a wide range of perspectives so that we can develop a more nuanced picture of the district as a whole and the needs of all of its constituents. In addition to engaging regularly with the school board, with district staff, with principal advisory committees and principals, we have and we will continue to reach out to a variety of people and groups that are willing to share their perspectives on DeKalb County schools and what they hope will result from the comprehensive master plan. We've built a robust network of champions throughout the county that we can rely on for the duration of this process that Hans just described. But if you belong to an organization or a group that hasn't spoken to us and that you feel has a valuable perspective to share, please do reach out. These conversations are ongoing and we value your feedback. All we ask in return is that you help us get the word out about the CMP so that we can make sure that the master plan reflects the needs of the entire district. Among the organizations we've spoken to are economic development organizations like Decide DeKalb, the mayors of Lithonia, Clarkston, Tucker, Avondale Estates, Dorville, Brookhaven, and Dunwoody, city council members from Stonecrest, Dorville, and Stone Mountain, charitable organizations like the United Way and Catholic Charities of Atlanta, and even civil rights organizations like the NAACP. Across the district, we've heard about problems with maintenance and frustration with long deferred maintenance. It's clear that major investments need to be made in order to upgrade or replace aging facilities, to rectify deferred maintenance issues, and to eliminate trailers. Given the experience of the last year with remote learning, there's a strong recognition that internet and technology infrastructure will continue to play a big role in the success of schools and that they need to be upgraded and made uniform across the district. Another frequent theme that we heard in these conversations is the value that parents and families place on the variety and diversity of school choice programs that are available to students. Many would like to see these offerings expanded in order to make them more accessible to more students across the district. And many DeKalb communities lack a sufficient supply of quality childcare and early childhood education. We heard a desire for more early childhood education options that would help prepare the district's children to be successful once they matriculate to elementary school. We've also often heard about the importance of community and the role of schools in helping to create a sense of community. Sometimes this has to do with a strong correspondence between attendance zones and various municipal boundaries. And in other cases, it simply has to do with the value that people place on the role of neighborhood schools. We've also heard from communities that feel left out, but that desperately want to build a stronger school community relationship. And we believe that this desire for community is a strong foundation for the development of the CMP as we move forward. As part of those conversations, we were encouraged to reconsider current grade configurations and school sizes to increase diversity, limit middle school attrition, and make better use of available seats. DeKalb County is very diverse, and across the district, we have heard that constituents want to see that diversity reflected in the student populations of schools. Finally, many would like to see school facilities made more accessible for use by the communities that they serve. This could be for after-school programs, for adult education, for mentoring programs, and for sports. Since school facilities are so prominent in many communities, it seems like a missed opportunity that they can't be used more often outside of school hours. Our conversations with DeKalb mayors and other municipal leaders indicate that the district could take advantage of more opportunities to work with city and county governments to leverage resources and funding to solve school-related facility challenges. Now, through this process, we've had numerous conversations. I may have spoken to some of you in the audience tonight, and we took a lot of notes, and we captured this is a small sample of some of the words that were shared with us on these topics that we were talking about in terms of equity across the district, in terms of facilities and infrastructure, redistricting and merging of schools, thinking big about the district and the opportunities that the CMP presents, and in general about facilities and how they reflect the way we invest in our communities. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Stephen Brown.
Thank you, Jared. I'd like to provide everyone with an update on the assessment data. Within the last 2 weeks, updated versions of the draft reports have been published on the CMP website. These include the FCAs, the ESAs, school capacity, as well as the inventory of special programs. I would like to thank all the community stakeholders, regional maintenance staff, school principals, and PACs for their invaluable input throughout this process. As stated here, these reports will remain in the draft form until the final comprehensive master plan is issued. If you haven't seen your report, you can access them from the link provided here in the presentation, as well as this presentation can be downloaded from the main website for the comprehensive master plan on the district's website, district's webpage, excuse me. Next slide, Jared. Regarding the updated FCA reports, we just want to reiterate that these are part of our QA/QC. They've incorporated feedback from all stakeholders, and they've been reviewed by the CMP team and the district. As you look at these updated reports, you'll see changes in the scores, but overall, the averages across the district remain relatively the same. Schools that are in poor condition are still in poor condition, and those are targeted for upgrades remain as well. Next slide. And with the updated FCA scores, as you can see here, we've created just a simple graphic to show the averages by cluster and region so you can get an overall perspective on the facilities across the district. Since the last issue of the draft FCAs, scoring averages across the district vary by plus or minus 5 points. As we present these options developments tonight, please note that while these reports are important, the FCAs are only one component in the list of many that will inform a prioritized list of needs for the facilities across the district. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Barbara Crum.
Good evening, and thank you, Stephen. Thank you all for getting on board with us tonight. I know there was a little confusion. We sure appreciate your hanging in with us. As the superintendent said, this is a plan that looks out 10 years. Nothing is going to happen tomorrow. And we know that, as I say, change is hard. And one of the things when you do a plan this big is we are suggesting all kinds of recommendations. And as I reiterate, as the superintendent said, these are recommendations. We need your input. This is the first time we've put these out to the community, and we desperately want to hear your reactions and what really sticks with you and what doesn't. But we all know that change is hard, and it's important to look at it that way and understand it, and understand it's different for everybody. Next slide, please, Jared. And I think change is hard is one of the things that the board chair said to us early on, knowing that we would, have a lot of tough decisions to make during this process. And one of the other sayings that kept occurring from input as we went through this is that everybody gets something, but no one gets everything. So an equitable plan does something for everybody. And so please keep those two big ideas in mind as we go through the plan. They were sort of guiding tenets for us as we work through with the community and stakeholders. Next slide, please. And most important in all of this, think big. We really want to leave the district with a big plan that can be encompassing for everybody and really makes the district a very, very viable place in 2031, that it addresses the facility conditions, it addresses the utilization of seats, and it addresses the programs. And it really wants you to think big and think, what is the right thing to do for the entire district over the next 10 years? Next, please. And so in looking through all of this and talking and having wonderful input for which we are so grateful from all of the stakeholders, we really came to a set of goals for the comprehensive master plan. And some of these I'm sure you've heard before, but just to reiterate, we heard a tremendous amount of conversation about how proud you are of your neighborhood schools and how invested in them you are. And then we heard the other side of being good stewards of the finances of the district. So, you know, one of our goals is really to try and maintain that feeling of neighborhood while being sensitive to the costs. And again, we want to try and maintain that feeling of neighborhood while also diversifying the student demographics. Jared talked about how diverse the district is and how important it is to reflect that in the school populations. And as we've said in previous town halls, one of the other things we want to address, of course, is the overcrowding. So our benchmark on that was looking at schools that would be over 100% utilized in 2031. And similarly, we looked at schools that would be underutilized with under 70% of the seats filled in 2031. And again, we looked at addressing the condition of schools, and we looked at schools with a FCA score below 60. We had to have some benchmarks of schools that we really would look at first. And I think as Jared also said, and Stephen said, and Hans said, we looked at different grade configurations. And one of the things we heard across the district from parents was that there's an attrition issue with the middle schools. The children go to the elementary schools and they come back for high school, but a number of them go elsewhere in the middle school years. And so we were looking at what were some of the options to really address this. And one of the things that came across loud and clear was, could we change the grade configurations? Could we think about extending the elementary schools through 8th grade and keep those children with the same counselors, the same social workers, the same teachers who knew them all the way through and kept them through 8th grade? So we really looked at the option of doing some K-8s throughout the district. And then one of the other things we looked at was sort of using the resources the best we could throughout the district and really beginning to look at how to use these resources best. Next, please. Those are sort of, as I talked about, sort of the big pictures. There were, as we started to really look at what could we sort of plan for in the next 10 years, we said, what are some of the things that help us sort of look at how to manipulate this plan? And there are sort of hard quantitative things and qualitative things. And these are some of the qualitative things we looked at. We realized that we really wanted to build our clusters around a feeder pattern that really made all of the high schools and middle schools equal in their population. The district has a really sort of median sort of size of the high schools at 1,600, and most of the middle schools are 1,200. Some are a little bit bigger, but in general, those are the sizes of the high schools and the average sizes of the high schools and the middle schools across the district. So to us, that said that the class that goes into 6th grade is typically around 400 students, and that class matriculates at that same size all the way through 12th grade. So in looking at trying to balance the district and be equitable in sort of the size of all of the middle schools in the incoming class, we looked at moving clusters around to make sure that we had that 400 student class going into 6th grade. Next, please. The other thing that we realized in trying to balance those clusters and balance the seats in the district, that, you know, the district is so large from District 1 to District 7 that you couldn't necessarily balance out the seats across geography. And we just said, look, we're going to learn that, you know, to accept the fact that we can't align the population with seats within reason. The districts, the geography was just too great. So we said, we'll just have to accept geographic discrepancies. Next, please. And then the other thing we realized, again, sort of dealing with the issue of neighborhood schools, but costs, we realized that it really made sense to expand programs and save money. We realized that if we could consolidate some of the schools that are too small and that are underutilized or in terrible shape, if we could consolidate them, we really were able to do a school and look at maybe the 900 student model that they've been building throughout the district. And in that sense, you get more student support, you get extra social workers, counselors, and even possibly assistant principals. So again, it's programs, it's putting that money into instruction rather than buildings. There is a lot of money being spent right now in the upkeep of buildings that are underutilized or too small and that are in poor condition. So it made sense in some instances to really suggest some mergers, some consolidations. And again, these are things that are not happening right away. Children who are there are certainly going to be able to finish. This again, let me remind you and reiterate, is a 2031 plan. So please don't think that this is going to happen tomorrow. It does, as we went through with the financial people, there is a great deal of savings when you can consolidate services, food service, transportation, other kinds of things. There really is a lot of money that would be put back into instruction. And we realize the other thing is it can expand programs. You can expand art programs, music programs. There are a tremendous amount of things you can do when you have the larger school and more support positions and more money. Next, please. And so those are sort of some of the soft data. And then, you know, that's driving a lot of our decisions. And then, of course, we went back to the hard data. And the hard data is those FCA scores and those utilization numbers. Next, please. And I think I put two maps in here that I think are very telling from our demographer. And I think this is really a telling map. This shows the schools that were under 60 with their FCA scores and the schools that are between 60 and 100. And what you see is the schools that are in poor condition are pretty distributed throughout the district. It is true, I think a great number of them are in Region 2, but generally they're everywhere, and mostly they're elementary schools. So we wanted to deal with those in our recommendations. Next, please. This is just a list of these schools, and this will be posted on the CMP website, and you can read it. And I apologize, it's so small, but I wanted you to have it in the presentation when you look at it more carefully. And interesting enough, you'll see Jolly, Idlewood, and Stoneview are among those in the poorest condition. And those are some of the ones we're trying to address immediately. Next, please. I think this also is a very telling map. Again, our demographers did this for us, and they show really where the schools that will be over 100% utilized in 2031, those are under 70%. And you can really see, again, this is very telling in that it shows that most of the overcrowding is going to be in Region 1 and Region 2. Next, please. And again, this I'm sure you can't read, but it will be on the website. And this will show you those schools that will really be terribly overcrowded in 2031 and those that will be underutilized, where the seats are underutilized. Next, please. And I think, again, these maps are very telling because they show you, again, their 2030, 2031 school years. And the one on the first one is the elementary schools, the middle one is the middle schools, and the one on the right-hand side is the high schools. And you can see the elementary schools, you know, there's some growth everywhere across the district. In the middle schools, that growth is mostly in Region 1 and Region 2. And similarly in the high schools, it's Region 1, Region 2, Region 4, and then down in the Lithonia area. So again, you see the overcrowding and you see sort of where the district will be in 10 years. Next, please. And so, you know, just taking those, as Hans said early on, we are trying to look at the big ideas. There are a number of sort of pieces that will fall out as we get feedback from these town halls. But I just wanted to present to you sort of our big ideas, dealing with what we think are the biggest issues that we should deal with first. And then there are a number of other cascading ideas and recommendations that will come out of this. But let me first address the big ideas. Next, please. The biggest issue we found, and I know you all have heard about this for the last 10 years, is the overcrowding in District 1. And the overcrowding, you will see Chamblee, Cross Keys High School, and Dunwoody High School are all going to be 50% over capacity in the next 10 years. Many of them are there now, but it's going to continue and increase in the next 10 years. Similarly, Sequoia Middle School is more than 50% over capacity. And even Chamblee and Peachtree Middle School will be well over capacity. So we said this is the biggest issue that we really have to hit head on. One of the biggest issues, there are quite a few. Next slide, please. And so what we are recommending really is to hit it head on, is to build the new Cross Keys and build it at 1,800 students, a little bit bigger. And the biggest new idea we are saying is, we are saying that we think you ought to create another cluster in Region 1, a whole new cluster, and build a brand new high school, build Sequoia High School, and build a new Sequoia Middle School, because that building's overcrowded and in terrible shape, and then have new feeders to it. Consolidate Dresden and Cary Reynolds. And one of the reasons we said to consolidate Cary Reynolds and Dresden is both of them have low FCA scores. But to build the new Sequoia and the new Sequoia Middle and the Sequoia High School, we would really like that site that Carrie Reynolds is on. So if we could consolidate Carrie Reynolds with Dresden on the Dresden site, then we have room to build the high school and middle school where the middle school is right now. We also are looking at creating a K-8 at both Austin and at the new Dunwoody Chambly site, which is really the new Shallowford site. That's a new elementary school that will open in 2023, I think. And so both of those schools have extra seats right now. And the K-8 is sort of a win-win for us. If we can expand the student population at Austin to have a 6th grade, a 7th grade, and an 8th grade, and similarly at the Shallowford site elementary to have a 6th grade, a 7th grade, and an 8th grade, that takes some of the heat off the middle school overcrowding. And it means we don't have to immediately build classrooms at Peachtree Middle or Chambly Middle, that those children would stay in their present schools and those would go to K-8. So it helps us with the overcrowding, and it helps us with the academic attrition and the continued instruction pattern. So it's sort of a win-win all the way across the board. The other thing we saw right out of the box was the crowding at Stone Mountain. So we saw that we need to build additional classrooms at Stone Mountain High School. Next one, please. So as I say, the first idea was really addressing the overcrowding in general, the really big overcrowding. The next one sort of is addressing the overcrowding and the poor condition. And we found this in a lot of elementary schools. And as I said, when you look at the list of FCAs, you will see 3 of the lowest scoring schools, and that should be a 49, excuse me, that's a typo up there. Idlewood, Jolly, and Stone Mountain were among the poorest scoring FCAs, and we realized we needed to do those immediately. Similarly, Hightower, Ashford Park, and Farrington again are low FCAs, and Ashford Park and Hightower again have the issue of overcrowding. So we're trying to really look at, the overcrowding and the poor condition and deal with it as soon as we can. Next one, please. And then on the other side of the coin, to address the underutilization. And part of that, as I said earlier, is really creating K-8s. And so if we can take some of those children off the middle school bubble and take them back to Austin and take them back to Dunwoody to the Shallowford site elementary school, that really helps with the overcrowding there. And we talked about, to do that, there's a little bit of conversion we do in the K-8s. You have to put some science rooms in, build some locker rooms, and deal with the fields, but it's not a huge expense and it could be done quickly. Similarly, Smoke Rise helps us in the same way. There is overcrowding and will be overcrowding at Tucker Middle School. And if we could keep some of those kids at Smoke Rise where we have empty seats, then again, we don't have to build classrooms right away at Tucker. Indian Creek is an interesting one too. It does have some seats right now. And one of the things you'll hear me talk about a little bit too, and I know this is important to Region 4, is Clarkston. At Clarkston High School in Clarkston area, they would really like, there's a lot of conversation with the parents and other stakeholders in the community about having a middle school closer to Clarkston High School. And we're not sure that we can do it day one, but if we could expand the student population in Indian Creek and keep a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade there, that gets some students closer to the high school immediately. So it gets them out of the middle school, the distance going to Freedom. So we thought that made a good move. We also do have seats at Pleasantdale and Peachcrest. And again, we said, let's try the academic program there and see if it helps with our middle school attrition. So we are suggesting the possibility of creating K-8s at all of those schools where we have the empty seats. Next one, please. And again, as we said, we did with overpopulation, overutilization and poor condition. Here we'd like to address the underutilization and poor condition. And some of these schools really are small schools and they're not in good condition. And as opposed to just continuing to fix them up forever and ever and ever and keep that small population, we really are suggesting in the long term of merging Midville and Livesey, merging Dunair and Allgood, merging Hendersonville and Hawthorne. Next, please. And there were, after we looked at the hard data and the soft data, there were still some projects that came out of the conversation that really had a lot of priority. And one of them was the addition and renovation at Druid Hills High School. The high school really has a good deal of its classrooms in what was an old elementary school, and it just doesn't work for high school students. So we said, and the old building needs a lot of renovation, but basically it's not a capacity issue as much as a condition and programmatic issue. So we put that on the list as a major priority. Similarly, there was a real drive to merge Stone Mill and Stone Mountain elementary schools to better serve the mobile population. There are a lot of children in that area who move during the school year, and they move from school to school. And it's very hard when you start a new school in the middle of the year. So we said, if you could build one large elementary school that would take that whole catchment area, then when children move, apartments or houses, they don't have to move schools. So we thought that was really important. And then the third thing I alluded to before was really the Clarkston community really would like a middle school closer to the high school. Transportation is hard for that community, and Freedom is really a long way from the high school. So we really said, could we begin to look at either building a new high school and middle school on that site, or could we do some renovation addition at the high school and build a new middle school? I think we are still on the fence about where to put that middle school, whether it's on the same site or can we have property. But a big priority for us was building a Clarkston Middle School near the high school. Next one, please. And then the expanded school choice programs. We've had a lot of conversation about school choice, and there are a lot of great ideas on the table, but the big ones we wanted to put out there that we really sort of found consensus on was really building a new performing arts academy at the Avondale High School site. We looked at a number of other opportunities site-wise, but it kept gravitating back to that's the best site to put on. The access to it is good, it's well located in the district, and it has enough property that you could really build a terrific performing arts academy there. You have parking, you have room for theaters, it's a great site. And the other two things we were suggesting is to build a career academy at McNair High School. There was a lot of talk from a lot of the PACs that they really wanted more career tech opportunities for their students. And we thought, again, McNair is a great site. There's a lot of space there. We could build a lot of big high bay space and really add a tremendous amount of programs at that site. So we said that seemed like a really great site to do a career tech academy. And then we are suggesting that you create a cyber technology and engineering academy. We are finding in the conversation with career tech teachers throughout the district and throughout the city where we've worked elsewhere, that there's a lot of jobs in cyber technology and cyber security, and a lot of kids are very interested in going into this sort of field. So we thought this is where the jobs are, and we really ought to look at doing this kind of program. And so again, we thought Towers High School is a good site. It's geographically accessible, and we thought that would be a really good site to do it. And then we heard lots of conversation from the Wadsworth and Kittredge communities about expanding those programs to 4th through 8th grade. Right now, those children go through 6th grade and they enter middle school in the middle year, and it's harder. We thought instead of doing that, just take it to 8th grade, and then all of those children could go into high school together. And then we heard lots of conversation about offering the high achiever programs across all schools. So I think, the district is striving to offer those programs to many, many more students. Next one, please. And the other interesting conversation, there's, as you know, there's a early learning academy in Region 7, and it's hugely successful. And we talked to parents about that. They really said it would be great to have that kind of opportunity throughout the district. And we realized as we begin to balance the clusters and try and get the right number of kids going into the middle school and the high school and begin to do some consolidations, there will be facilities available. And so we are recommending trying to do in the next few years an early learning center in every district. And in time, as we do some of these mergers, other elementary schools will become available and you could do more of them. But basically we said out of the box, if we could just sort of say, let's try and do one in each region and really serve the population as best we can. And then I think, as schools become available and the population and the drive is there and the need is there, absolutely, these could be put in any of those facilities. We are trying very hard not to close any facilities in our consolidations. We really want to keep everything, but it may have a different use. Next one, please. And then just briefly, I'll go through sort of building the future by region. We have a few more things in these slides, but again, these are beginning to, coalesce as we go through and hear from different constituents. Next one, please. Most of this repeats what I already said. The only two different things here, I think, are to balance those clusters. We are suggesting move Hightower and the new, what really is the Shallowford Site Elementary to the Chamblee cluster, and move Ashford Park to the Cross Keys cluster. And we are certainly keeping the Cross Keys High School on the site it's on, and that's where we'd like to rebuild it so it's not so far from Ashford Park. I think the rest of those, we talked about before. Next one, please. Again, in the region 2, we were talking about moving Sagamore Hills to the Druid Hills cluster, again, to balance out the number of kids going into middle school. And I think I mentioned the K-8 at Smoke Rise. Here, we're looking at an early learning center at McClendon. It's the smallest of the elementaries, and those children could be redistricted to the adjoining elementary schools. And again, build the new Idlewood. I think the rest of these I talked about before. Next one, please. In region 3, the big one is building a new Stoneview Elementary. That's one of the schools with the lowest FCA scores. And we say you really need to do that as soon as possible. Next one. Region 4, which is important tonight. The main thing that we suggested, as I think I said before, is really creating that K-8 in Indian Creek so we can move some children back towards Clarkston High School as soon as possible, and then hopefully build the middle school soon thereafter. Create an early learning center at Allgood, and again, we're suggesting Allgood because in the future we are suggesting merging Allgood and Dunair, and we think Allgood's a good site. It's centrally located in the region to go ahead and put the early learning center there. Again, build a new Jolly as soon as possible. That's one of the lowest FCA scores also. And then build the new Clarkson, either renovated, new, whatever, and a middle school. And we certainly could put it on that site, but if we could find an adjoining site, that would be great too. And the classroom addition at Stone Mountain. And we talked a good bit about, excuse me, okay. We talked a good bit about the consolidation of Stone Mountain and Stone Mill, and we definitely need to do it. And we need to do it, as I say, a larger elementary school that really does have a larger catchment area. One of the things we've talked about is that if we could quickly build a new middle school for Clarkston, it would free up Freedom, and we might be able to move Champion to Freedom, and that would give us the Champion site for the Stone Mountain, Stone Mill consolidation. At this point, really, we are sort of looking, where do we put the middle school for Clarkston? That is the sort of, that's the domino that opens all of that up. Next one, please. And then in Region 5, moving Farrington to the Millett Grove cluster, the early learning at Rainbow, and then building those 2 elementary schools. Next one, please. In Region 6, we were looking at making an early learning center at Tony because it's the smallest population right now, a new K-8 at Peachcrest. And then that's the one where we're so excited about the Cyber Technology and Engineering Academy, which we think would be a fabulous program. Next one, please. And then in Region 7, creating the Career Tech Academy, which seems to have a lot of parent support, that would be great. And we talked about possibly folding in Tech South programs. DeKalb Tech South is really oversubscribed. It's not big enough. It can't do all the programs they want to do. So if we have the space at McNair and can really build out some great space for those programs, it would be great. So that's sort of our long range plan for the Career Tech Academy. Next one, please. And then just to give you a little bit of time frame, and this is not the end all be all at all. This was, go to the next one, please. This was really our first sort of look at this. You know, we have a 1 and 2 year time frame, a 2 to 5 year time frame, and then a 5 to 10 year time frame. And really in the 1 to 2 year time frame, if we could go ahead right now and start the design on Cross Keys, it was already designated to be built, to be started in SPOS 5. There's a little bit of money left in SPOS 5. If we could figure out a way to get that going, it would be great. And if we could get the Cary Reynolds and Dresden consolidation going, then it would help us with SPOS 6 when it starts to really begin to have that site to do the Sequoia High School and Middle School on. And then similarly, we are recommending that we do the Idlewood Elementary, the Jolly Elementary, and the Stoneview Elementary as soon as possible, as they're really in the worst shape. And then similarly, we said, could we merge Allgood and Dunair? Could we merge Henderson Mill and Hawthorne? And could we merge Stone Mill and Stone Mountain, you know, relatively quickly? Those, we'd like to be able to do them in SPOS 6. We think it's important to consolidate those schools and build a new school. I didn't say all of those. We intend to build a new school, a new 900 student school, and do that as soon as possible so they're in good facilities and they get out of those poor facilities. And then the early learning centers we could do pretty quickly, and the K-8s we could do immediately. And then the idea of building the performing arts, the arts academy, and then easily creating a career tech and creating the cyber technology academy. And then a little longer term out there. And as I say, as we hear from all of you, these things I'm sure will jump back and forth. The only things I'm pretty sure we need to do immediately are cross keys and the Kerry Reynolds in Dresden. So it goes back and forth for sure. Then we said, build a new cross keys middle, because we may not need that immediately if we can do some K-8s and house some kids in some K-8s, and then do the Stone Mountain High School edition, and then the other elementaries that need to be replaced, and then the early learning centers as other schools open up. So basically that's sort of our long-term look. The other thing that I neglected to mention is one of the things that's going on right now is the HVAC and roof renovations. If you go to the next slide, and again, you won't be able to read it, but I just wanted to put this in here, and it will be on the website. There are 22 projects that are already in design or construction that are roof replacements and HVAC replacements. And Hans and the district right now are prioritizing another load of these. And I think it's probably at least this many, if not more, to really go in there right away and deal with the things. We heard day one when we talked to every principal was about the condition of their HVAC systems and their roofs. So we are really going in there right now and trying to do this. I just wanted to tell you 22 of them are underway and the rest are getting scheduled right now. Next one, please. So just in summary, let me say, as I seem to reiterate over and over again, we really want you to think big, and we really want the master plan to address the overcrowding, to address the underutilization, address the poor condition. We're excited about the idea of K-8s and early learning. It really begins to address a lot of the academic needs across the district. We're excited about increasing diversity and equity by redistricting and changing some of the feeder patterns. And we really are excited about the mergers, because we think so many schools need to be replaced and really need a fresh new school. And the fact that, money is being spent now keeping up buildings that are in terrible shape, and it should be, spent on instruction and programs. And as hard as it is to merge schools, and as I said, change is hard, in the long run, it's money going to instruction and programs. And that, I think, is the bottom line of the whole plan. So thank you very much. And now I'll open it for questions. Oh, I'm sorry, one last slide. We do have a poll here that we'd love for you to answer, to let us know what excites you most. Are you excited about the early learning centers, the idea of K-8s? We've heard a lot of excitement about the K-8s, the Performing Arts Academy, the Career Academy, the Cyber Technology Academy, or anything else. We would love your feedback. This is just the first of much feedback we'd like for you. So I think the next slide, does it have the Menti on it? Or is it on this one? Oops.
It's on this one, Barbara.
It's on this one. I'm sorry, I just didn't see it. Please answer. Please give us your thoughts, because it's very important for us to know what's really the most exciting for you. And at this point, I think I'll turn it over to Hans for the questions.
Actually, I am going to assist with the questions
Oh,
tonight.
Dr. Stevenson, I'm so sorry. Thank you. The Wonder Woman. Thank you.
Okay. Well, before we get started, let me just say that there has been lots of hearty discussion in the chat this evening about DSA, and I am really happy that it seems that our stakeholders are excited about the plans that are forthcoming for DSA. So let's get started with the questions. Okay, there are about 3 questions that I'm going to condense into one. When can we expect an update on the inventory of school choice, the ESA guide, and will we be able to see the rest of the FCA draft score slide by cluster rather than just the first page?
I'll go ahead and answer that. So there are a few broken links, unfortunately, on the data matrix, the assessment data tab of the CMP webpage. Specifically, so we're looking into that right now. I actually wasn't aware of the ESA guide link being broken. It is. So we're going to try to get those updated as soon as possible. Hopefully by tomorrow, we can get that working up and working again. Same thing with the inventory of special programs. That one is also broken, but we're also in the process of making sure all of the numbers on there are correct. So we're going to try and get that updated. Hopefully tomorrow, we'll see. But unlike the ESA guide, which I believe is just a broken link, that one will actually be a updated version where the only real difference will be some of the numbers that are listed for like how many students are attending which program. Otherwise, it'll be much the same as the old version. And as with the FCA, what was that part of the question?
The FCA. When will we see the rest of the FCA draft score slide by cluster rather than just the first page?
Yes. So as far as I know, and Barbara, you can let me know, that's something that it exists as a dashboard, but it's really just the same information that is on the data matrix. It's just the FCA scores either by the high school or aggregated up to at the cluster level. And that's something that I think you guys put together at Perkins & Will, put together primarily as a visual for this presentation to say, here's kind of what it looks like across the district. But all of the data that is there is on the data table. It's on the data matrix on the assessment data tab of the CMP webpage.
Okay, next question. Let's see if we can sprint through these right quickly. When will the public see cost estimates for these new schools, K-8 conversions, and early learning centers?
So the financial impact, the financial analysis of all of the recommendations for the CMP is a major component of the comprehensive master plan. It's one of the task items that we went over. For anybody who's interested, this presentation, all of the slides are available on the CMP webpage. Right there on the front, listed just below all of these October meetings is a link to this presentation. And so the third slide, I believe it was the timeline of CMP implementation. And part of on there is that financial analysis. Right now, the plan is that'll be presented with the draft CMP. So with those draft recommendations, what will be coming out of all of the feedback that we're getting from these meetings here in October will also be more of a schedule and timeline for when will these things actually happen. And then also what are some estimates for how much they may cost? We'll be refining our estimates as we go along. It probably won't be till the final CMP that we get our final estimates, but we'll have, with the draft, will be some draft estimates of how much these projects will cost, and therefore how much will be applied to which funding source. I think a question came up a few times as far as what are the different funding sources for all of these projects? And what we can say is the primary funding source of the district for major construction projects is East Blast. So currently we're on East Blast 5. There will be additional revenues with East Blast 5 beyond what was originally projected. The overall budget of East Blast 5 for the entire program hasn't changed in 5 years. And so concurrent with the CMP and CMP recommendations, there will be recommendations that go along with, what projects should be either expanded, current projects in East Blast 5 that are expanded, projects added to, or we also have CARES Act funds that will go towards facility condition improvements, specifically HVAC and roofs. So we'll have those funding sources identified as well, which schools will be getting new roofs and HVAC. And then on top of all of that will be East Blast 6. What are the projects a draft project list for East Blast 6 is another deliverable, another final component of the CMP. And so that's something that you will see in the draft CMP, maybe not in its final form, but there will be a draft project list of at least the construction projects coming out of the CMP for East Blast 6. Those are the primary funding sources. And I will say for a lot of these really big items that you see on here, East Blast 6 will be the primary funding source. Some of the items, especially ones that are in that 5 to 10 year category, might end up pushing to later SPLOSTs if they happen, such as East Blast 7. But right now, East Blast 6 is the next upcoming SPLOST.
Okay, can we give a little bit more information regarding the construction of DSA? Can we give a more definitive timeline as to, hi, I see your little sweetie in the background. Is there a more definitive timeline of when the public can expect construction to start on DSA?
Hans, do you want me to jump in a minute and then you can jump in too? Let me answer. I've been looking at the chat while he was talking. I love that you all care about DSA. I do too. And let me say one of the things I totally agree with you in our idea of doing a Performing Arts Academy, we really want to make it a high school that's bigger. And whether it's 1,200 or 1,600, we certainly don't want to come back with a 400 student school. So we absolutely, in part of the programming, as we look at this, we'll look at a really large school, you know. So please, I see all of your comments and I totally agree with you. I think that it will take, one of the things I put in that list of 1 to 2 years, 2 to 5, and 5 to 10 is I'm hoping in the next year or sooner, we can really program that. And the question is, you know, how big is it? What are the offerings and everything else? Once we get it programmed, we put it in the 2 to 5 plan, and we would really like to get that built in SPOS 6. So that's the hope.
Okay, well, the time is actually 7:01. Hans, can you please share with us where our stakeholders can submit the questions that we were unable to get to this evening?
Sure. And all of the questions from all the chats and all of these October town hall meetings, we will be answering and uploading to the CMP webpage under the public feedback. Yes, public input tab. But it will take a few days for us to get that and answer them and then upload them. Otherwise, any other questions that you have, if you go to the CMP webpage, I believe it's been posted a few times. It's DeKalbSchoolsGA.org/comprehensive-master-plan. But the best way to get to it actually is to go to the main DeKalb webpage. And if you scroll down underneath the picture of our lovely superintendent is a link to the comprehensive master plan. And that's going to be the easiest and fastest way to get there. Underneath the announcements that show all of these October regional town hall meetings and has a link to this October town hall presentation is what we're seeing is a new CMP stakeholder feedback survey. And that's a great location to go give your general input on, there's various main components of the comprehensive master plan, but it also includes this question that you see here on the screen, what excites you most about the CMP vision? So that's a fantastic way to give us your input. And then finally, any other questions, any other major concerns, anything that what doesn't fit on the survey that people want to share, people can email at CMP, Comprehensive Master Plan, CMP at DeKalbSchoolsGA.org. And that's the main DeKalb email. And then we will be responding to all of those emails.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. Thank you to our partners at Perkins and Will and everyone who joined us this evening. We know that we could probably stay here for another hour, 2 hours to get through the 99 messages in our chat. And we're just so grateful to, I think it was about 134 participants this evening. So we thank you to everyone in Region 4 for joining us this evening. Again, we will air this town hall again on Thursday. We will capture all of the questions in the chat and responses will be provided on the website. As Mr. Williams shared, you can continue to send in questions or thoughts or lift up, celebrate things that you heard or seek clarification for things that were not as clear for you this evening. So we're just really excited again about your enthusiasm for the art school. We're so committed to that, as well as the other questions, issues, and concerns that were raised. So again, thank you very much for your attendance this evening, and we look forward to continuing the conversation moving forward. Hope everyone has a good evening, and thank you again for your patience with the earlier confusion.